So we're going to see a roundtable discussion to tackle what are the synergies and how to improve these synergies in the Nordic-Baltic market further. May I present the roundtable members? Moderator of the roundtable, Sami Lampinen, chairman of Finnish VCA and founding partner of INVENTURE. Rasmus Thomsen, strategy and development team lead at Vaekstfonden. Monalotte Theorell Christofferson, chairwoman of Swedish VCA and CFO of Stena Sessan. Rokas Peciulaitis, chairman of Lithuanian VCA and founder and managing partner of Contrarian Ventures. And Tanya Marvin-Horowitz, partner of Butterfly Ventures and deputy board member for the Finnish VCA. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Kadri. Big thanks to Estonian Venture Capital Association, Margus and Kadri. You've done a stellar job in putting all of us behind the Nordic-Baltic momentum. I'm really happy to chair this roundtable. We try to make it as lively discussion as possible. We have a super good selection of individuals with long careers in the private equity side. And very briefly, of my background, I have about 25 years of experience in investing in Nordic technology, early stage companies. I'm the founder of INVENTURE. We started as a 3-member company, and now we have a team of 15, and we are actually doing deals in all the countries in the Nordic-Baltic region. I've been also at the board of directors of the Finnish Venture Capital Association and the chairman now for 2 years, and my biggest personal objectives is to increase diversity across the entire asset class, not only on gender male split, but also in terms of asset classes, attracting different types of LPs into different type of private equity products. Also other topic is boosting internationalization, international syndicate, making Nordic-Baltic venture and private equity scene even more international hub for international LPs, even from global domains. In the roundtable, we want to address and learn a little bit from the best practices, some of the very personal experiences that how we have seen the Nordic-Baltic region already working really nicely, and what kind of opportunities we see in the next years really make the region fly. What kind of initiatives we could propose? Do we come up with task forces? What kind of action points could we present to a variety of stakeholders, GPs, LPs, policymakers, government entities, also regulatory officials? There is a lot to be done. And we are in a good growth momentum. I believe in all the countries. If we look 10 years back, we are more than 5 times higher in volume. We are able to attract a lot of international money to portfolio companies. We are seeing many unicorns in the technology field. We are seeing super successful IPOs from the buyout side. But still, the local pools of money, if you look at across the region, all the countries, the amount of local funds and the local money put into local companies, we have not been able to grow that tenfold in the past 10 years. We probably have been doing quite okay, maybe 2 times, 3 times a larger amount of money from local funds into local companies. But we really want to see that as one of the opportunities in this roundtable to really capture that. Is there more to be done in making our region even more attractive base for global LPs, and what would be needed in that one. With that introduction, I would be super happy to give a floor to our roundtable. members, and since venture capital and private equity is all about people and persons around it, people's business, as many want to say, I want to have the board members, the roundtable members, give a little bit of a perspective where they come from, what they do today, what kind of organizations they represent, and see how they address the Nordic-Baltic momentum from their personal perspective. So if we start from Monalotte, please go ahead, and then you can do it in random order after that.
Yes, and I was very glad to see the number that Sweden is actually number 1 in the sustainability index that you showed, Marcus, to start with, because that's something we work with very much in the Swedish VCA right now, about the sustainability and also the gender diversity initiative. And I can talk more about that later. But my background is that I started my career with working with auditing in KPMG with large financial companies, and then followed by working with Investor AB with large listed companies. And the past 12 years I spent in the private equity industry in Scope, and it's as admin partner and CFO, and we work with small entrepreneurial companies in the growth segment. And since 1 year, I am with Stena Sessan, CFO, and that's a private investment company to invest in growing sustainable companies with a long-term horizon. And in my view, I truly believe that private equity and venture capital has a unique opportunity to build better companies. And private equity owners have a long-term view of the companies. Private equity owners have influence, and private equity owners have the means and capital and network to really ensure that we contribute to sustainable and better companies. And I'm really happy in my role as chairman of SVCA to spread knowledge and facts about what good things we do in the industry to build better companies. And a few words about Stena Sessan. We invest in growth companies, and one example is Voi, and we heard earlier today about Bolt. So Voi is one of the competitors in the micromobility industry. We also invested in Budbee, which is a last mile company for e-commerce businesses. We also invest in Exeger. It's a solar cells which provide a flexible material to put into consumer products, and they just launched a helmet for cycling which can be charged by solar cells and thereby not using battery power at all. And my experience from the Baltic industry is actually in 2018 within Scope. We made an investment in Miss Mary, an underwear lingerie companies, which had 100 employees in Tallinn with sewing these lingeries of good quality. And actually my experience from the investment was that it was quite cumbersome, the administrative process, and also the loans, where we had Swedbank at the time, and they were scrutinized of the anti-money laundering regulations. So there was very much formalities in the signing and sanitary power to register, and a lot of work from lawyers. So if I could wish something, a harmonization of these company registration acts and corporate information and reporting procedures would be very welcome.
Thank you, Monalotte. Would it be Tanya to go then next?
I guess you're letting the ladies go first, huh?
Well,
no problem. Sami, thank you, and thanks for the opportunity to the Estonian Venture Capital Association, and also Karma, obviously, for having me here today. So I'm a partner at Butterfly Ventures. I will give a little bit about my background first. 25 plus years in financial services. I started out as an asset manager, and then went into investment banking as an M&A banker on Wall Street for almost 12 plus years. I got into venture capital due to my love during the banking world of working with early stage technology companies, and started my first fund in New York City in 2012. That fund today, of course, is 8+ years old, but we've done super well with it. I invested across the US, but also was able to move to Stockholm in 2013, and then was able to also invest through that fund, CAPE, into Nordic companies. So we ended up, out of the 18, having 4 Swedish, 2 Finnish, and an Icelandic company as well in that fund. Today, that fund's done super well. I mean, I've had 5 exits, and the best exit actually came from Finland. So a company called Small Giant Games, which was an amazing exit story. But then I started talking about staying here in the Nordics with my husband, and we decided to do that. And I had a co-investment through my fund in New York with a fund called Butterfly. And that's how I got to know the Butterfly guys, and they were primarily a Finnish-based deep tech fund at that point. And when I joined them in 2016, we raised Fund 3 together. And today we are pan-Nordic and Baltic. So my 3 Finnish partners handle Finland and the Baltics, and I, again, reside in Sweden, so I handle Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and Iceland. Today we have over 84 companies that we've invested in. 27 companies of those are in the Fund 3 that I had just joined with in 2017. And our portfolio market cap today with those 84 companies are just around €1 billion at this point. So we are raising Fund 4 now, €60 million, and very excited to do that because we feel there's so many amazing opportunities that we're seeing not only across the Nordics but the Baltics, and I think that this conference and event couldn't be better timed because of the opportunities. And we'll talk about it a little bit further, obviously, in the conversation. But seeing the perspective from me coming as an outsider from the U.S. and seeing the venture capital system there, and then seeing what's been happening here since I started investing has been truly a unique experience, and we'll be happy to share those thoughts with you at a later time. I'll wrap up by saying a couple things about myself. We were told to talk a little bit of personal stuff. So I'm an avid tennis player, and I keep active off the tennis court by running after my 3-year-old son. So yeah, it's a lot of fun, but a lot of work. But thanks, guys, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks. And would it be then Rasmus?
Yes, thank you, and thank you for the opportunity. This is a really great, event, and also time to speak about this has just been mentioned by my colleagues. I come from Vaekstfonden, and for those of you who don't know that little bit weird word, Danish word, Vaekstfonden is the independent sovereign investment fund of Denmark. We are a partner that do both debt guarantees, equity, direct, indirect. So we have the whole broad range of instruments. We've been around since 1992. We also work today as a sustainable investor. So our thesis is that a business needs to be sustainable to be relevant in 30 years. That I'm sure is also something we will get back to throughout the discussion today. Besides our own mandates, we also manage several mandates from pension funds and fund of funds in Danske Kapital 1, 2, and 3. And we try to build a coherent ecosystem from pre-seed, where we're bridging the gap between hard and soft money through accelerators, business angel programs, together with the IF, for instance, to later stage venture and growth. Of course, we are measured on more than on our return, but our average return on equity has the last 5 years been 15%. And yeah, we see ourselves as a long-term partner willing to take risk. Something that I also like to get back to is that we really believe that the public sector can act as an independent fund, but still coming from the public sector, act on market terms. And we do only work on market terms to build new markets, to build new unicorns, and not as a substitute or as public substitute. Myself, I come as a background actually a bit more from the public side. I worked as a diplomat for 5 years in Brussels, working with the EIB, EIF, been working in the Ministry of Finance. And since working in Vaekstfonden for 3 years, I've been working with our strategy and business development. The latest has, besides a lot of COVID-19 response, been the Green Future Fund of Denmark, which is a 25 billion Danish kroner fund, or in euro 3 billion approximately, which is mandated with investing and financing the green transition by both accelerating the implementation of known technologies and develop new solutions that are needed to get to zero emission economy by 2050. I would love to, I really look forward to talk more about how to create a coherent ecosystem, and also how to place the Nordic hub in an international setting. Of course, as Vaekstfonden, we do have a national angle, a Danish angle, if you will, in everything we do, but we do invest internationally and also have a man on ground in Silicon Valley, for instance. So we both work together with Silicon Valley Bank. We've invested in Alderton. We work with Antler. We worked with a lot of different funds throughout Europe and the US. And it's all to build and connect the Danish and Nordic ecosystem in a globalized world. Thank you.
Give us some energy. Good.
Being the last one, so I'll try to be short because I wanna have a lot of time for our discussion. So I'm Rokas. I wear two hats. One is a chairman of Lithuanian Venture Capital Association, and the other one is I'm a founder of Contrarian Ventures. We're, in short, an early stage hands-on fund focused on sustainable energy transition, investing across Europe and Israel. Launched in 2017. We have 17 portfolio companies, primarily focusing in energy and mobility. I think two words that are important in the sentence how I present us is community and hands-on. So we're a younger group of people. We have venture partners in London and Netherlands, and headquartered in Lithuania with my other partner Thomas. And community is quite in the DNA, I think, of our firm. So we run one of the largest conferences on sustainable energy transition called Energy Tech Summit. We also just recently launched Climate 50, which is an initiative to basically gather all the investors and raise awareness for LPs. I think in a topic that we believe is very important. Started in 2017 when probably climate was not a popular word. I think it's definitely getting more notice, and we're excited to be here. So I'm super excited again to be with such an accomplished group of people to discuss where we're heading next.
Thank you, Rokas. Okay, then I would like to capture a little bit what Rasmus was mentioning about the Nordic-Baltic hub, some of your initiatives, some of the insights that you've seen as an LP. If you start from that one, and if Monalotte as a growth and buyout related investors, if you can share a little bit of your learnings and best practices that you have seen, and also what could be relevant for Nordic-Baltic becoming a stronger hub.
Yes. So Vaekstfonden, I think, as a national promotional institution, has of course quite political mandate to focus on the Danish ecosystem, and just to say that it's not been easy. You can quite easily imagine politically to do the argument that you need to have an international focus with the end state and taxpayers' money. But we happen to do so, and the history for us says that every 1 krona or euro we invest abroad has been brought 4 or 3 times or 3-folds back to Danish companies. So by practice, we have proven that this is also like a good business for even from a national point of view. But more importantly, it's also important, for instance, if you look at new initiatives as an LP investing in funds, that often even the Danish ecosystem isn't strong enough in itself, I would say, to sustain its own, for instance, university fund. So there we have been LP in a new fund called IRE, which is a Swedish-Danish fund connected to universities in Copenhagen and Lund, and so on and so forth. We were really looking at broad angles to connect the Danish ecosystem better across, of course, the Nordic Baltics, but also even with the US.
Yes, and I can comment on the Swedish market, and actually the market is well capitalized in Sweden, and really a lot of funds have been coming into the market. Over 31 billion euros has been raised in Sweden since 2017. And out of those, it's 2.5 billion only in the growth segment. So it's really a lot of money, and I think Sweden is number 4 in the fundraising in 2019 after UK, France, and Germany. And why is that? I mean, I think there are several reasons. And one is that Sweden is in the lead in the ICT and life science of goods value add. There's a strong academic and research community. And Swedes have been early adopting the digitalization strategies through political initiatives. Another factor is that there are good exit opportunities. We have a well-developed IPO market and a large growth PE sector. The ecosystem to go listing and delisting is well-functioning and well-functioning throughout the whole capital chain. And we have also a well-developed later stage VC sector. So, which, however, it could become even better to reach full potential. There are some things that we would like to be done. Maybe we can come back to that. It's about tax harmonization. It's about employee stock options and less bureaucratic employee laws to attract talents. And yeah, we can talk about that even more later.
Yeah, thank you. I'm very happy that you mentioned the IPO market, because Sweden is absolutely fantastic. How well Sweden has been able to kind of grow the listing market. So everybody certainly can learn from that one, and it well could be a Nordic-Baltic initiative to re-expand it further, make it easier for younger companies to do a listing in the joint market. That's for sure. Anything from Rokas and Tanya on the evolution, the market as of today, and also moving a little bit towards the opportunities? How attractive you see the market from a venture point of view?
I want to actually take a step, one step back, just as a narrative of thought. So I was probably one of the first generation to be born in independent Lithuania, which we yesterday had a restoration of Lithuanian independence. So born 1989. That's not a long time past, right? So only 30 years, and now Venture Capital Association, which I'm chairman of, was established in 2008. Probably one of the first venture capital funds were established then. So I think at the time I was just joining university and graduating from school. So funnily, where I'm going with this is that it's such a short period of time. I think majority of the funds that are in the Baltics are emerging managers, meaning that they're in their first or second generation of funds. And what I kind of find and see, it's very interesting, because from a fund perspective, if you look at the whole, let's say, Baltics or Nordics region, there's a good diversity of emergence and state where each ecosystem is. I think Baltics stand for more like the earlier stage ecosystems, and Sweden is more mature. There's more exits, more IPOs. I think that's where we're heading with the Baltics, with certain companies now. You know, the unicorns are growing each year, and we're seeing more maturity there. I think it's a great timing to reflect now that we only have 10 years since the first funds. So only the first ones that were raised in 2008 are now maturing to see some returns. I think that will give a lot of caution for foreign LPs to come in the region and actually come in to see in the leading managers in their second, third generation of funds, where they're not first-time funds, they're first-time managers, but there's already a track record behind them. And I think there's great opportunities from, again, deal size, deals that you can be looked. And I think we are seeing that more and more bigger funds from US and Europe are actually entering the market to come earlier, even before A round. So very, very interesting development. But I think always important to have a reflection that it's only been, 10 years for the ecosystem itself. So I think very great timing now, especially.
Yeah, and I'll chime in as well. I mean, I have a bit of a different perspective, I think, coming from the US, landing here in 2013, which the ecosystem here in my backyard, which was Sweden at the time, was obviously one of the most mature ones at that time, but it still really wasn't, where things are today. I mean, it's quickly moved along. So when I came here, I went to all of the Nordic countries. And what I saw I thought was very fascinating. There were lots of different ecosystems within each country. I think, like, for example, even between Gothenburg and Stockholm today, there still is a bit of, a separation. And when I say that, I mean, a lot of the Gothenburg-based companies have to come to Stockholm to get funding, because there's not much in terms of seed funding for early stage companies in Gothenburg. So, there's the Almis, which are amazing, which are all over Sweden. But there's definitely a disparity when it comes to these, I'll call them more rural or local ecosystems. And I think that's totally changed since 2013. I mean, I remember when I was trying to raise our second Cafe fund, though, from 2015, we couldn't do it from the US because people were in the US saying, well, I don't really know what's happening in Sweden and Finland and Norway and Denmark. There hadn't really been the big exits that we're seeing today. So the tune has totally changed. And in fact, I'm seeing a lot of US-based fund of funds taking interest in the region now. So we've come a long way, and thanks to a lot of the seed funding that we've had through Business Finland, which was the old Techis, Sam Invest here in Sweden, Investinor now this past year has a fund of fund program as well, and I think they've launched like 8 seed funds. And I'm very close to the Norwegian ecosystem as well. We have two Norwegian companies ourselves, and we're very early stage investors. So having those potential co-investors, such as the Almis and the Investinors and the Business Finlands of the world, is also angel groups. I shouldn't forget to talk about angel groups, because like for here in Stockholm, it's Stoaf. I think those are very, very important groups as well. And then you get, we're deep tech investors, which is, and I think we discussed, how they're in Sweden in particular, there's a lot of the research and that's coming out of the universities. We see that Nordic wide and inclusive of the Baltics, of course, as well. And, I think there's a lot of similarities. I do see that there's still some issues with Sweden investing in Sweden, Finland investing in Finland, but that is totally changing. And when you have a pan-Nordic fund like Butterfly is, you have that opportunity to really bring those communities together. And, I come from a banking perspective in private equity and whatnot. So I kind of looked at the Nordics and I said I couldn't invest in just Sweden. It has to be the entire region. And I think, for better or worse, that's what I think that people should start thinking about, and how do we communicate that? I think we do it through the funds and exactly what we're doing. I think we're on the right track. And then we can, the co-investors that we've had in our third fund, for example, they come from mostly the region. It's a really good sign. So we've had investors, invest in from Sweden into Finnish companies and vice versa. We've had investors coming in from, Europe, for example, and even Techstars. We have 4 of our companies that have been in Techstars programs. So that's, US based. So, it's really great to see that the world is seeing this, as a ecosystem or an ecosystem together. And, those co-investors do come here for the later stage for sure. But that's just a little bit about my thought process on what I've seen since I've been here. And I do believe we're on the right path.
Maybe.
Very good. You mentioned about pan-Nordic-Baltic venture fund. Also capturing the idea what Rasmus was saying, that investing 1 krona out of Denmark brings 4 krones back to Denmark. Since we all know that we don't have that many LPs that are so-called pan-Nordic LPs or pan-Nordic-Baltic LPs. Is there a chance that we could break the kind of more national boundaries, taking a higher view on the Nordic-Baltic, possibly through fund-of-fund structures, working with big LPs, trying to really convince even outside Nordic-Baltic LPs joining forces and placing relatively big tickets into the region in terms of making sizable tickets for the funds that could then take our investments to the next level. Any views on that?
I think one
I think it's.
Sorry, go on.
Sorry, Rasmus. I'll just say one quick thing. We're currently fundraising, and it's even during COVID, it's had its challenges, but there was a lag time. But I have absolutely seen, since I'm responsible for a lot of the out of the Nordics LP interest. I do see, when I do look internally though, that a lot of the Norwegian investors that we've been talking to really only invest in Norway. Sweden is a little bit more open. Denmark, I think, is really they seem to be quite open, and Finland, in my opinion, has been the most open. Just from what I've seen high level from our LP responses. But like I said a few minutes ago, we're seeing a lot of inbound coming in for the region, which I think is super important. So to answer your question in very short, Sami, I think there's a huge opportunity for a fund-to-fund for the Nordics. I think it's a great idea.
Rokas, you had the only one.
I have probably 3 observations that feed into the logic. I think that this fund would make sense. I think first one is to my previous kind of message that the majority of funds are still emerging managers. The size is quite small of the funds, so sub 100 million funds. For the bigger LPs that come from US, like endowments, public pension funds, they usually look beyond second, third generation of funds, as well as with the size that would not match them because they have to deploy large amounts of sums. So I think something like fund of funds would definitely make sense. Emerging manager as a group, as well as take into account how many unicorns this region has done for the last years, especially the IPO'd ones and soon to be IPO'd ones. Probably one of the best deals that we know come from countries that are not necessarily Western Europe. UiPath, a good example, right? It's probably going to be a fund maker for 3 funds: Early Bird, Seed Camp, and Credo. So what's interesting, I think, is these dynamics of different valuation that you can get, therefore higher performance for the funds, a lot of interesting emerging managers, and ability for someone to have a yield enhancing of backing the region into a fund-of-fund strategy would definitely make sense. And sort of the last interesting part to it is, especially Nordics and Baltics, what if you compare it to Western Europe or the general average, I think there's just returning entrepreneurs, so serial entrepreneurs coming back to build companies, and that is definitely what UK was built on, or Germany as a country. So returning entrepreneurs, or from big groups of people that were super successful, like Rocket Internet in Berlin, which build a plethora of companies. So I think that is already happening in Sweden with Spotify. That is definitely happening in Estonia with Bolt Pipedrive and others. And we're seeing, given that we're in Lithuania, we're seeing the same exact thing. And this is definitely a very interesting phenomenon. I think fund-of-fund strategy definitely is something that, you know, every LP that wants to have a balanced ability to back these unicorns that are you know, made in not necessarily typical countries where it was over the last 10, 15 years ago.
And maybe yes, if I can add to that.
Go ahead.
No, actually, just first, I would just want to take one step back, and it's also a little bit to do with the COVID-19, because if I was asked, well, it's not only a year ago, but a little less, what would happen with during COVID-19 and the venture and private equity market, most people will not maybe afford something different than actually happened. That we can see that 2020 has been as strong as 2019, which was a record year in Denmark and even in the Nordics in Europe. And the latest number for January 2021 has been by the largest venture investment activity in Denmark ever recorded. So the market is red hot right now. And even more encouraging, it's also new investment hasn't fallen, as you might imagine. But I think to the idea about a pan-European or pan-Nordic, more specific pan-Nordic fund, yes, we also see the need for that, and also especially also connecting the Nordics. But also there's an interesting theme in that venture capital is both a global phenomenon, but it's also locally anchored. You need a venture capital fund that knows the local ecosystem and can really be the partner with the startups, with the company, because that's also another insight that's also really seen over the last couple of years, is that the competition is not so much now on the company side. It's more between the investors who can really bring value add to the company. But at the same time, you need an investor who really needs to know the local environment and the specificities of Göteborg and Stockholm and Copenhagen and Aalborg and so on and so forth. You also need them to be global anchored. As a startup today should think global from the startup. So a fund forward is also good in that sense, that it can kind of bridging between the local and the global. And then I also think when we're looking at Nordic-Baltic, you can't overestimate the importance of unicorns like Spotify, Skype, and etc. And we have the new ones coming up with Klarna and so on. Not only for the company itself, but for the whole ecosystem as such, be a flywheel or flight carrier or whatever you would call it. But that's really something we should be focusing on as well, how to create the next unicorns at the same pace as we do today, but also maybe have a little talk on about how to keep the valuation in the Nordics. Because I would also like to touch a little bit about the value leakage problem we have a little bit with the US.
Yes, and I can just comment also about the fund programs that I've seen in Sweden. The trend is, I don't think there's a policy on the government level, but the trend is to invest more in fund strategy rather than investing in local or smaller funds or startup companies. I mean, the government don't have to build up their own competence or administrative organizations for that. So I think that's a good way to go. And I would also say that it's important that Nordic-Baltic level is fine, but also on an EU level, it's really important to see that we have harmonized rules and regulations on an EU level, and really be aware and try to stop harmful decisions such as the EU initiative on tax and digitalization services, for example. It's really, that's where we can also put efforts in seeing that the EU makes good harmonization on all regulations and tax. So I think that's where we should put our efforts.
Thanks, Monalotte. Then I may also turn to Kadri, whether there are any questions. We have still at least the sustainability theme that we want to address a little bit, but in case of any one or two questions, we can try to squeeze in quickly if you can prepare. But meanwhile, I would probably turn a little bit to discussion around it, that what's the kind of dream scenario that you would like to pitch to LPs on a 2030? What could the industry or the region look like if we take a one fund lifetime 8 years ahead? What kind of a dream scenario we could capture and then present it in front of future LPs? A little bit of a
Sami,
forward,
just a very quick update from Kadri here from the studio. Let us give you 10 minutes for the discussion and 5 for questions. So there's an extra 15 for you guys. So we can have the break smaller. Yeah, smaller break after that.
That's appreciated. So we can still continue with this dream scenarios and then how the region could look like, and then we take the Q&A after that.
Yes, sure.
Maybe Rokas has something at least on the sustainability team. Muted?
Yeah, sure. So I think just one note, I think, from the dream scenario. I think what's interesting is sort of when I look back in sort of 2012, 2014, the topic in every other conference was to build a new Silicon Valley somewhere else. Now, probably with the COVID even more so, there's not about chasing a location, right? So I think what's interesting for us as I think ecosystems are, and we kind of tend to see from different countries, is this some sort of specialization, I think, in certain sectors. While ICT, for example, is obviously still the big trend, but we can go deeper in some specific subcategories like transport, one being one example, energy, medtech, which is obviously biotech, with one important as well. I think there will be some great leaps towards this region becoming one of the leading ones in certain one of them. And fintech could be one of them as well, and Swedish success in Klarna, or like I think Lithuania specifically positioning as a regulatory framework point. What's interesting for me is the collaboration of these companies. And I think while I'm very super excited, we have one Swedish company and they actually opened an office in Lithuania, which is going to be their dev office. And these also synergies open up great opportunities for, you know, working together and building companies that then go to conquer Europe. And I think there's been that great synergy between Finnish and Estonia. I think there's more and more happening between Norway, Sweden, between other Baltic countries. I think working relationships are best relationships to work on. And I think when time proves those, there's joint successes that can be, you know, also cherished. So I certainly believe there needs to be more interrelationship and more deal making between different countries. And I think that's what brings great relationships and successes together to this region altogether, not to a specific country. So I'm in pro of less nationalism, more regional positioning for sure on that note.
Thank you. Okay, and anyone else wanna fire up the dream scenario 2030?
If we talk about dream scenarios, let's also talk about sustainability, because I think those two are kind of connected, and also especially with the Nordic position. In the next 30 years, the Earth's population will grow by 2 billions, but even more importantly, the food demand for food supply will grow by 60%. We have the technologies today, but also need to develop the new ones to actually address these things. And one thing that's also common, and also to the introduction to this panel, is that the Nordics is really well suited, established for that. So I agree, Rodri, we shouldn't only focus on one specific location in the world or be the new Silicon Valley, but I could say that I think instead of chasing Silicon Valley, we could create a Nordic hub that could be the focal point for sustainable solutions and technologies that can underpin this. So that would be a dream scenario from our side. And then, of course, you can only agree that less borders, more cross-border, the better. And then we can also talk about specific initiatives to do that. But the vision should be to be the hub for the sustainable revolution in the coming years.
Yes, and I would like to take up that thread also on sustainability. And in my view, private equity and venture capital is really the catalyst to make sustainable companies and to help entrepreneurs to become sustainable and to build the best companies in the world. And that's why we also within the SVCA we have a project now to really show the media and politicians and other interested parties that private equity, what we do in sustainability. So we're collecting KPIs from all the large players in Sweden, and we're making a report on to show how we work with these sustainability issues and what numbers we can present. We're not there yet, but we have been working with it for a long time, and we are serious about it. So we would like to show that this sector is very good in providing sustainability in the world. And we also have another initiative that we're very excited about. It's about, together with NASDAQ and Albright, an organization working with diversity. And it's an education program for all listed companies and all private equity-owned companies in Sweden, together with the Nordic VCAs, to provide education on diversity matters and how can we provide more diversity in the boards and in the company managements. And that's important for growing companies to really be aware from start to really be diverse and then thereby be better companies and better performance on all stages. So that's the dream scenario, that we can show all the world that the private equity and venture capital is the way to go if you want to build better companies.
Thank you very much. Yeah, go ahead, Tanya.
Do we have time?
Last remark. Yeah.
Okay, I'll try to make it quick. So I mean, as everybody knows, we're deep tech investors, and I really think that the region, the region already ranks, all the countries here rank in the top 10 in research and citable documentation. So a lot of the deep tech that we invest in comes from the university sector. Not all of it, but a lot of it does. And deep tech today, I mean, that's obviously AI, but it's also in the health. It's in every industry. It's in Industry 4.0. But what I think is interesting, we try to invest in companies that help solve the world's greatest challenges, and that lends directly to sustainability. And I think we have a gold mine sitting at our fingertips here in the region with regards to the competence that I personally see in a lot of the teams that are coming out of the universities or other. And I think, I'm not saying that we need to focus on deep tech. What I'm saying is that it is a part of I think an underserved market, an undercapitalized market opportunity. So it's an area I think that is going to yield tremendous upside to the world as we know it in the future and our children.
Very good. Thank you, Tanya. Now we are rounding up. Just the final remark, trying to capture the recipe for success, which of course, as venture capitalists always put, it's just to put the recipe in place or playbook and execute. So I clearly see what the fellow roundtable members have been pointing out there. With a little bit of more money, we could capitalize a higher amount of innovations and boosting entrepreneurs, and with a bit of less regulation that could actually help us collaborate and finding the synergies between the countries, even on a deeper and faster level, which would then help the companies grow faster. And with higher fund sizes, we could also avoid some of the valuation leakages and utilize local exit opportunities, either through IPO or corporate trade sales on a faster scale. And this could certainly be something that would add into a sustainability track that we could also have quite a high impact on these high growth startups, saving the world in the next decades to come. At this stage, I will thank the roundtable members. We may be tight on time, but now for the Q&A.
Yes, thank you, guys. It was such a fruitful discussion. I think we will have time for 2 questions. So the first one would be, how VC key people see the solution of the market failure in financing for the development of science-intensive business. I think it is more of a question towards the Baltic markets, because the Nordics is paving the way or showing the benchmark, but still a good question.
Anyone wants to? Does Rokas want to take it?
I can probably try from one angle. I think it's a bit of a tricky question. I think from a VC standpoint to answer it. I think there's been a lot of money come in science from non-dilutive in a form of grant financing, which I think really stretched the market to a level where I think there's a lot of science going on, but lack of commercialization, because it's not KPI driven. It's usually more an experiments. But I think there's more willingness to take risk at earlier stages. I can probably speak from our background as well. We've backed numerous companies that obviously were pre-seed or pre-product that went to the market and successfully capitalized on that science. But I think there's more and more. I think we don't need to come outside of the Baltics, right, or outside of the region. But there's more and more financing at earlier stages that is willing to back companies at earlier stages without proof of concept. So I think we shifted the whole funding cycle a bit notch back with more risk taking. As well, I think the problems that majority of these companies that are coming from science are solving are real problems. So it's not just another app or social app or productivity tool. This is really, really big problems that feed into the sustainability theme. And I'm super happy that there are some fellow investors coming from Sweden, someone like Norskin, to mention, for example, are willing to go and back these companies early stage with investors, especially understanding the specific topics and how to help these companies. I'm a big believer in specialist funds. I think being a generalist has never been harder than before, with the big funds raising significant amount of capital. There's not enough just saying you can add value. You actually have to add value to these companies that you partner, especially the earlier stages. And then I think there's never been more important community element of being successful and building a successful brand. Having money is literally the last thing that entrepreneur expects from you. So I think there's a great deal to be done in backing science, but I think you need to take your sleeves down and really go to do work to make it successful. So next 10 years from now, we see IPOs in these sectors. And quite excited, to be frank, about SPACs and things similar, transactions that help companies without revenue to go public. So US is definitely way ahead of time, but interesting to follow.
Yeah. I would probably add on that one because we have invested quite a bit of the science and deep tech related startups, you could say, back in the days. And what we didn't see always present was the really fast growth driven entrepreneur. Scientists, sometimes they go into a really great technology, they go into patented ideas, but sometimes the business moves faster, it moves in a different cycle. So that's why we have added quite a lot of value and power to building the right talent into those deep tech startups. So certainly the level of talent has to be there from all the layers, not only the science part of it, but building business, building partnerships, and also building the business model that is attractive for next funding cycles.
Thank you. And then we will have the final question, which you touched upon too a bit before, but the question is, Nordic-Baltic VC startup ecosystem is doing very well. However, the US is still the major exit market. How could we improve the regional exit market?
I mean, I can take a stab at that.
Yeah. Go ahead, Tanya.
Sorry.
Tanya, go ahead.
I guess it's whoever speaks first, right?
Yeah.
I mean, look, the U.S. Most of the companies that I see, here in the U.S., they can't get funding in the local markets, or they want to grow quickly, and they see the U.S. as as a marketplace. The exits. You talk about we just talked about SPACs. They're great and wonderful, and it's like a SPAC market right now. But I do caution about those types of vehicles, I would call it, for funding. Luckily here in Sweden we have NASDAQ First North, which is a really great opportunity, especially for we talked about deep tech a minute ago. We as well, I mean, that's what we do as deep tech, and get in very, very early. And some of the companies, have to continue to get funded. And, if there's not that deep tech capital at a certain level, Series A or whatever, they might have to go to a NASDAQ First North, or, to continue to fund. How do we create the ecosystem here? I mean, I think that, you've also got the secondary markets, secondary players that I think are actually starting to infiltrate now, and we have more and more of those funds coming in, which I think also gives some additional and extra capital and liquidity to the market. But the U.S. is always, unfortunately, I think it's being a banker, an ex-banker. I think that they're going to continue to have that. I'm not saying that London or the Nordics here can't equate that, but I think there's a certain level, where you kind of Spotify go public here can, Sami, you can probably talk about your journey with Bolt and how that whole situation, but it's, I think that, when you get to the larger billions of dollars, it's hard to compete with the U.S. Unless we can get that infrastructure set here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Once again, thank you.
So guys, it was really interesting to listen your thoughts, and then we could continue for hours, I guess. So, but we have to stop as we're going now for a small break, and we'll be back at 4:35. So everybody stay safe, and see you again, hopefully.